What's up, everybody? This is Bluetoshi and Disco and special guest Scribe talking to you about all things OpCat, Runes, Fractal, and the whole nine yards.
This is Decentral Lens, distilling the crypto news you need to know and why.
All right. Well, this is Blue, not Bluetoshi anymore. I don't know if you saw Scribe, but I changed it just to Blue, not to confuse with the Bitcoin Boo founder, Bluetoshi and Bootoshi. So it's just simply Blue now. I got Disco with me in Decentral Lens and Scribe, one of my favorite people in the whole world. Disco hates when I say that, but in this case, it's true. So Disco, you can't get mad at me after the show for that one. So Scribe, welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you, gentlemen. Wonderful to be here. Sorry for stealing your BFF, man.
It's about continuing to potentially crutch on certain phrases. So it's more of a coaching thing that we've been working on.
Okay.
And he's right. I repeat, I have like 6 phrases and we all do, right? We all go to that thing. So
verbal pause. Yeah.
100%.
Embarrassingly enough for me, I tend to keep using the term giddy. So, I mean,
you do use it a lot.
That I can improve. I know.
And sometimes Scribe, he says giddy is a schoolgirl. I'm like, okay, your words, not ours, but that's fine.
That's true.
So Scribe, welcome. So I'm so fired up. So today we are going to discuss basically OpCat, Fractal, and then Runes and how, OpCat kind of opens doors and ties everything together and kind of just what to look at. So first, welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So let's get right into it. So first, I think to lay the table for Fractal and Runes and that discussion, let's get into OpCat first. And just, for those who haven't done a deep dive, we've all heard of it on the Bitcoin and the X timeline. What is OpCat and why are so many people so bullish on it and others are like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the question here. When I first heard of OpCat, immediately I'm thinking some sort of acronym. What does the CAT stand for? What does it mean? And you heard about some of the ideas that the different developers in this space might present. Oh, this could enable such and such. We need this. But effectively what it is, it's an opcode that was in Bitcoin initially. Satoshi put it there, but then he took it out later. And there was some potential attack vectors. But lately, since the Taproot update, the tap script only allows 520 bytes. So the attack vector is kind of gone and they want to put it back because it will allow all sorts of different, robust programmability. And what it stands for is concatenate. That's where the cat comes from. And that's just a term in computer programming to like join two things together. So if you have one bit of data and you want to join another bit of data together, now they are one piece of data and it has been concatenated. And you can put that at the top of the stack. And then so it's the first thing that is triggered upon with a new transaction. And so that enables all sorts of different, within OpCat, you can unlock what's called covenants and all sorts of different use cases. And what a covenant is, you may have heard that, is just like set terms on how Bitcoin can be spent. So it introduces a number of different potential products, services, and the like, effectively almost like a Turing complete programming language within the script that you can use and leverage to create smart contracts on Bitcoin. That's with OpCat. And OpCTV, if you rewind a little bit and you look at the history, that's another opcode. It stands for Check Template Verify, CTV. And so this was introduced by Jeremy Rubin in 2019. And it is similar to OpCat and in that it would provide some expressivity for developers. You can do a number of different things. It'd be good, and it's got a general agreeable or favorable sentiment within the developer community of the Bitcoin OGs. But it's been 5 years and it's not live yet. And there's no real timeline on if it would go live. And so OpCat is kind of like CTV 2.0, where it gives you everything. It can really be like Ethereum and Solana for Bitcoin, whereas OpCTV is sort of an incremental upgrade.
So let's break that down, because that was a great explanation. But like, give me some examples, because when I hear over and over, like, we could do more smart contract stuff like ETH and Solana. For me, I like the immutability of Bitcoin, especially on the layer one with ordinals and art eternal forever. Like, I guess it's the first time I feel like I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm either not evolving or I just don't want more functionality. But what actually will Opcat unlock that would be so great for Bitcoin?
That's a good question, and it's got the implied fear of potential risk, and I can get to that too. Some of the things that it unlocks, better wallet security, much more secure than a multi-sig. If you have a covenant, and let's say an attacker gets a hold of your private key somehow, he's only able to spend X amount of Bitcoin that you have authorized into XYZ wallet, right? So you can kind of predefine where the Bitcoin that is in your wallet can go first, or even set up like a secondary vault to the point where if your private key is somehow corrupted, if somebody seizes it, they're trying to get into your stuff. Well, as soon as they make a withdrawal or they make a send transaction with your Bitcoin, it gets rerouted into a secondary vault that they don't have access to unless they've also cracked that private key. So it gives you kind of that redundancy, fail-safe in that regard as far as wallet security, which is huge.
That is huge. All on layer one?
It's all layer one. Yeah, everything.
There's nothing's happening on the side. There's no side chain or anything. Okay.
And you can use PSBTs or you can not use PSBTs. But effectively, you can dictate the terms of how Bitcoin is going to be spent. And then some of the risk that's involved with that is tied directly to those covenants, because it kind of opens the door for Bitcoin to kind of be frozen in time because it's recursive covenants. So let's say you have one Bitcoin in a wallet, you want to spend half, and you can only send it here. Well, the recursive covenants can end up recalling like the entire life of that UTXO, not just the next transaction, which means that once it's spent and it's moved, it can no longer be sent because it no longer meets the specifications of the initial transaction, because it's in a different wallet, it's got a different private key, all those different things. So you could, potentially reduce or somehow jeopardize the supply of Bitcoin if that's abused or even just at scale over the next century, incrementally increases. So that's the risk, and I think that's something that I had not known before, and I think a lot of people that are cheering and rooting for Opcat, they don't understand that. There's a huge risk vector. Now, a lot of well-known and respected devs will argue that point and say, yeah, but the risk for that is no higher than some of the other risk vectors that already exist. And there's been developments that kind of further harden and protect against that sort of thing. But I don't know if you have the ability to use recursive covenants on Bitcoin, whether it's a bad actor or just bad code, mistaken code, you could create some issues with the Bitcoin supply. And if it's on a micro level, no big deal, right? But if it's somebody trying to build an AMM and just like the bridge is burnt or what have you, you could lock up a whole lot of Bitcoin. And so that's the fear. And I think that's why it's going to be some time before we see Opcat go live. Like I mentioned a minute ago, Jeremy Rubin created OpCTV. He proposed that Bitcoin improvement proposal, that bit number 117 or 119, in 2019. It's been 5 years and that's not live yet. So for anybody in the runes and ordinal space to be waiting, I'm just waiting for RSIC so they can use Opcat, or I'm waiting for the quantum cats and catnip and all these different things. You're going to be waiting for a while. Find yourself something to do in the meantime, and you might get really good at it because you may have a good amount of time on your hands. 5 years for OpCTV, I would suggest or look towards that same sort of a timeline, 4 to 6 years. Could be 2030 before we get Opcat really going on Bitcoin mainnet. I definitely don't see it within the next year. I think that there's too much other stuff on the horizon for the devs to be thinking about completely changing. And if you look back at the history, there's only been two major updates to Bitcoin code: SegWit and Taproot. That's it.
Yeah.
In 15 years, there's two. And Taproot was not that long ago, a few years back. So it'll be in 2 years is my minimum time horizon expectancy to see OpCat live on Bitcoin. OpCTV could come before that, but I would venture to say that they either come together or closely follow, but probably packaged together in the same major update.
Right. Could you explain OPCTV in a little more detail? So what exactly is that one, and why do we care about that one?
Yeah, op check template verify. So it's similar to covenants where you can have predefined spending conditions essentially, but it's not the use of full recursive covenants that OpCat will provide. So again, going back to dictating how and when certain Bitcoin in your wallet is able to be spent. And then, expressively on OpCat, you can do a lot more things like an AMM. You could effectively have an automated market maker if you have OpCat. OpCTV will not allow an AMM, but it would maybe improve or enable or open the door for some different creative go-betweens. Like light pools can exist right now. On Bitcoin, it doesn't require either of these. But if we were to get OpCTV, then we might get something better than light pools. If we were to get OpCat, we would get, Uniswap on Bitcoin. That's sort of the way to think about the three different steps.
But the blocks are still roughly plus or minus every 10 minutes. You're still at the mercy of the speed of the blocks, correct?
Yeah, but within OpCat and some of this other stuff, even without that, I think I've been doing some digging. I don't think that you have to wait for a full block confirmation, because if you have a live node that's listening to transactions being gossiped by the Bitcoin network, you can see which ones have X amount of confirmations. They don't have the full block confirmations, but they've been mined. And you can see that actively. Within this 10-minute block, I can see that 37 transactions have been mined. Now, it's highly likely that those are going to be included in the next block. And so you can have sort of real-time updates. And that's something that Casey even mentioned in the blog with light pools. That could happen, now.
Are light pools and gossip technology one and the same? Because I know in one of his, it was around the time of the halvening, he was talking about, he said, I'm not going to make it, but, with gossip technology and light pools, that's how without OpCat you could solve runes being able to be traded much simpler, much cleaner, buying any amount you want, not in these lots or blocks that we have now. Is that accurate? Like, could we get there without OpCat with this gossip technology, or no, OpCat has to be involved?
So a gossip network and a light pool are sort of two different things. A light pool cannot exist without a gossip network, but a gossip network exists all over the world in technology. A light pool is just kind of a Rune-specific jargon that Casey came up with to call a gossip network for broadcasting different transactions within an ecosystem. So Bitcoin is a gossip network, and I wrote a kind of a detailed article on it's my profile. It should be in my highlights. I don't know if it's pinned anymore, but there's that Deep X article that I did. So a gossip network is effectively just going to take these different proposed transactions. You want to sell X amount of RSIC for X amount of decentralized, or vice versa, or whatever have you, and you propose that in a PSBT, and then a gossip network speaks that or spreads that to all these different nodes within that network, until somebody who sees that says, I want to execute on that, and I will sign a PSBT to meet those conditions, and then the transaction is complete. Then that gossip network broadcasts and gossips that data, that transaction to the mainnet, and the network agrees that this is done. And so that can be done right now on Bitcoin L1. It's like non-trivial, but it's not impossible. There's some super technical stuff that happens behind the scenes that I think are a lot more difficult and not insurmountable, but just a lot more involved and complex. So this is a little bit less complex and it's doable. I think that people are probably working on it right now. Casey was surprised way back in June or July that nobody had done it yet, or that was April, before the launch of Runes. He was surprised nobody had done it yet for ordinals. So, I mean, you know, in summary, I think that that's why I'm so bullish on Runes, because Runes exist now, whereas OpCat could be 5 years away. That means we're not getting this catnip that Udi proposed for 5 years. They said that they've been working on it already for a good amount of time, and that's great. I'm sure that they have a bunch done, but it cannot go live until OpCat is merged into Bitcoin Core.
What is
what
is catnip?
So you can think of catnip like Udi's version of Runes, I think. They're going to create a protocol that allows for you to create tokens and do all sorts of different expressive things with it. It's effectively like their plan for Bitcoin tokens after OpCat comes, and they have the ability to make smart contracts or Turing complete programming language with the script using OpCat. But that's a long ways off. And so what Fractal has done is they've implemented that now. OpCat in its original form is live on the Fractal Bitcoin network, but that's an entirely separate chain, you know, discussion, and people feel certain kinds of ways about it. We saw how that traded in the initial hype. Everybody was super bullish that China's coming. They're excited about it. You know, if the East is coming, liquidity is coming. But that's not sort of been the case. And if they don't get the Binance listings that people also speculated on, then it's just more bullish for Runes. And so I got a little bit of exposure to the Fractal network just to see, just in case I was wrong. But my general gut feeling was proved right. I got an easy miner. Yep. Shout out to the Hashlings crew. I got one of those. And I bought a couple of FB. And now I'm down on that FB. I didn't buy much, but it's definitely down. And I'll hold it. We'll see what happens, because there's a really smart guy I know, 0x Puff. You know him. He's in our group chat.
Yep.
And he made mention of the ability that Fractal and this Cat 20 protocol and all this stuff brings is like a sandbox. It creates a sandbox for Bitcoin devs to come in and build and test their theories and, you know, check if they can find product market fit and do a thing over here, right, that they can then take over to L1. So, you know, that kind of changed my sentiment, because I was full bear on Fractal, and I was full grizzly. Now I'm more like black bear. I'm still a bear, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just a less aggressive bear on Fractal.
You're koala.
Yeah, definitely not koala. But so you got the Hashlings miners, and I thought that was I really like ASICs and Bongo, and I thought it was cool what they did. I guess I don't know if you heard, it was on either Good Thing Show, it was one of the shows, and it was the Shroom Sunday Spaces, and I just kind of was like, explain this a little more. And I started like just drilling questions into them. And I'm like, but you know, why Fractal? Like if it could go to zero, people are like, I saw these polls and people are like, is Fractal, are you going to get it because you're speculating? You're going to get it because you're going to hold it. And like 99% speculative. It's like, of course people are going to speculate and people are going to mess around, but like, and his thing, which I was a great answer, he's like, well, then we'll just flip all the new miners we have straight to Bitcoin. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to pay through an NFT token or an ordinal token to mine Bitcoin, but I thought it was a really clever idea. And those guys are obviously totally above board. But, you know, since Fractal, what's the price of Fractal? Like it's gone down quite a bit, right? Like everybody dumped as quick as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, shout out to those guys, A6, Bongo, Zod, Blue. They came out to AZ a couple weeks ago, and we went and rode side by sides and dirt bikes in the desert. My chest hurt for 3 days sucking up all that dust. But I got the easy miner, like I said. And if Fractal fails, then they'll just switch it over and you mine Bitcoin. And it's pretty cool. But sentiment in general, or price-wise, I guess, Fractal was up to like $28, $32, I think, at the top, like within the first day or two. And it's since dropped. I think now it's $13.50. If you expand to the one there you go. You can see it's just a red slide down to doom, and it could be bottoming, and maybe something happens. But in other news, or in related news, I guess just yesterday, Cat Protocol, which is behind the Cat 20 token that was so heavily pumped on your timeline, they got their X account deactivated. So maybe it's back. I haven't checked. I saw this yesterday. It's this Protocol Cat is the username on X, and they got deactivated. Now, whether they rugged themselves or they were rugged, nobody knows. They've got that website there. You can look through the documents and see, what it is they're hoping to accomplish. Effectively, this in my imagination, in doing the reading that I've done, what they have here presented is what Udi is trying to do on mainnet. They're synonymous, in my opinion. Obviously different design philosophies, right, and different parameters and all sorts of stuff, but like the general skeleton of what this is it looks like what Catnip would be on L1 whenever OddCat is live, which again could be 3, 4, 5 years.
Do you really think, I know you've said that, and I've seen a lot of people say that on the timeline, and Udi was very defending that it could come way sooner. And I know nothing on Bitcoin with core developers happens quickly, as it shouldn't, right? Like I'm very thrilled about that. Like I don't want Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to be hardened because it's sats or money first, right? Mm-hmm. But he's very optimistic that it's going to come sooner. Why is your take that it's so long? Just because everything takes so long in Bitcoin?
Oh man, it's a nuanced answer. I think, number one, things just take longer. You got to get consensus around builders and miners and everything else to push a new merge or a new fork, essentially a soft fork. That's number one. But number two is just look at the macro. I think that we're supposed to. We just got a Ethereum ETF not long ago. They're talking about Solana ETFs and all this other stuff. So the powers that be, or those that fund the powers that be, could all be more inclined to let Bitcoin's expressivity wait on the sidelines, like let it be what it is. Potentially maybe Trump makes it a global reserve or part of the national budget or treasury. We just saw Bhutan. I don't know if you guys discussed that, but Bhutan is in like the Himalayas, and they've been mining. They switched up. They got like 870 million worth of Bitcoin, like 13,000 Bitcoins, I think. So you see Bitcoin is gonna dominate the narrative. We're coming into a bull market. End of the year is pretty typical. Election cycle,
right?
Even crazier. Whether it's Trump or Harris, we don't know. I think either way, Bitcoin is going to be bullish because either one is going to be for it and endorsing it, or the other one is going to screw up some other stuff and make you need that thing.
And print money. We just covered that actually in our other show. It was like either way, like the inept or the person who embraces it. In Bitcoin, in this case, it's going to go up either way for totally different reasons. 100%. And then you've got BlackRock. I think you guys were discussing that earlier in the show, or you wanted to, Disco. I'm interested to hear that segment because they're talking. They've got just a whole bunch of money, right? They just put out a couple of videos and statements on how they feel about it. Larry Fink has flipped super bull. I mean, he's not Michael Saylor level bull, but he's growing up, right? He's a young bull. And then you got Michael Saylor talking about him. He's still got money. He's still got coffers from this debt raise that he just did. He's talking about doing another one. He's got like 250,000 Bitcoin. All of those different things lead me to believe that we're going to have the bull run that everybody in this space expects. Then it'll cycle out, it'll peak, and then we'll begin to come back down. We'll be in this trough of disillusionment during the next bear, which could be, middle of 2025 or towards the end of that year. I don't know. And that'll be a duration, that's going to last a long while. And that's when I think we might begin to see some of this stuff begin to come. Give it 2 or 3 years for ETH and Solana ETFs to make the bag for the people in the black suit and ties. While they're accumulating Bitcoin, then they flip these different switches on in cahoots with the miners and with the lobbyists. Now they have more Bitcoin,
it's expensive. It's too expensive for others to get it. Then the price goes sky high, and you can do all kinds of stuff. But then that is
Right.
also when you get those different attack vectors. So
Yeah.
it'll be an interesting time.
So your main point though is basically there are so many bigger political powers, presidential election, sovereign nations, Bhutan you mentioned. I just saw Guatemala's like, if you think El Salvador, what they're doing is cool, we're doing even cooler stuff. So now countries like you're starting to see that second wave of sovereigns come in, which we're not talking like Wall Street, we're talking sovereign nations. But you're saying that might keep Bitcoin development slower because it is becoming such a central underpinning store of value like gold for the global, for the world.
Exactly. Yeah. If you want to, you want to attract all of this attention right now, everything that you just mentioned, they don't need that. None of these people on this list, and none of the sovereign nations need the expressivity of the programming language of Bitcoin, right? This is
Right.
something that people want so they can have fun with tokens and JPEGs.
Yeah, they don't need
It's not integral.
NatCats and block
They,
drops,
they
and
don't need
which are
any of
cool,
that.
but they're not.
Yeah,
They're
maybe
not
they'll
into
buy
it.
ours in years to come. You know what I'm saying? But right now, they're buying it for a completely different reason. So there's no huge monetary incentive to switch over. It's more about what we can do in the future. And I think the different use cases, that's one more notch or feather in the cap of Fractal, is that you can maybe go have different teams go and prove these different use
Right.
cases and say, look at what we can do with this mainnet, copy pasta of Bitcoin. If we have Opcat, we can bring that over here. And then after years of seeing that successful, or a good long time of seeing something like that successful, stable tokens, anything else, there's too many to list about just potential that you could build. Then they might start to have that conversation. But I'm just not bullish on seeing that anytime soon, which makes me super bullish on runes because they exist now. I don't think that the UX is that bad. I think people blew that out of proportion because the liquidity didn't come and blow their socks off. Now, if we get a Binance listing, nobody cares about the UX anymore. Suddenly, it's just like when you buy a JPEG or ordinal NFT on no matter what network, you're buying a unit. Um, this is just a unit with X amount of that token ID specified in the data. So I don't think that's the problem. I think it's just a liquidity and attention problem, and those are both solvable. You solve the first, and then it creates, the answer for the second. Attention will come when the money comes, and there are whales that can potentially, not manipulate but influence the direction things go. I don't know if you listened to Sanj from OGs and those guys on the Spaces last night, but
No, I
some of the
missed it, and it
numbers,
was like all my favorite people in one space. But I was
yeah,
busy last night. Like, oh, was it a good one?
it was good. Yeah, I could only listen in for about an hour because I had some stuff going on too, but it was good. And I forget who it was that mentioned it. It might have been Ordinals Pizza or somebody else, but maybe Donnie, I forget. But effectively, like, it takes very little Bitcoin to move some of these collections and these runes, like big numbers. Like you could have a 10x or a 5x with like 0.18 Bitcoin, I think was one of the figures thrown out. I don't know what collection that was, but you take a half of Bitcoin and throw it into any one of these collections, then that's going to significantly, the floors are so thin that will
Yeah.
significantly improve the price. It's not huge volumes, right? But it's big price appreciation. And those are the same kind of green numbers that people want to see that'll draw attention.
And the market caps are teeny. I know Billy actually got down to like 8 or 9 million like last week in the despair of the bear, and now I think it's already up to like 40 million again. So it is
Mhm.
amazing how quick tides can turn there. So as far as Fractal, like just before we move on fully to Rune, so Fractal, to summarize, is just basically this smart contract without Opcat. It's a full side chain, correct?
Yeah, you've got Bitcoin, then you've got Bitcoin Cash, you've got BSV, and you've got Fractal. That's how it goes. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and that's the only one that's Bitcoin. Everything else is something different, right? We know that these are different, and people have contentious debates over how they feel about some of those. You can feel how you want. But effectively, what Fractal boils down to is just another hard fork of Bitcoin that they went and changed and modified, and then included Opcat so that it's available right now. But it's not Bitcoin. And so anybody, you can see the sentiment on the timeline too. People were not bullish or thrilled to go and inscribe art on Fractal. They're still not. There's a few collections that have been out. There may be one or two that see some sort of success based off provenance, but I don't see it because it's just another chain. I can mint an NFT on Polygon or
Cardano.
Tron or any of these, Cardano, and just because it lives in the UTXO like Bitcoin does, doesn't make it Bitcoin. That's why ordinals are special. Inscriptions on Bitcoin are special, and there is no competition. So I'm super bullish because they exist. I'm super bullish on runes because they exist. They're simple. Right. It's very, very streamlined, like 32 lines of code. They work. They just need liquidity, and we need more players in this space, not just Magic Eden. I don't trust Unisat for my runes after some of their early issues, and they're so focused on Fractal that they're not going to give a lot more development to runes. So we need more players in the space. I'm bullish for DotSwap. I think that they're coming on board. Arch Network is something I'm looking at. All of this stuff is going to improve the usability and the ecosystem tools and integrations for rooms and for the user, and they can happen right now. Whether if that's in the next 6 months, by the summer of next year, maybe during the peak in the next 3 months, 3, 4, 5 months, we have some of these new tools roll out that are just blowing our socks off and creating incredible amounts of liquidity and activity. Then the problem is over, and rooms are not going to die down.
So Fractal...
Scribe, I'm trying to figure this out.
Go ahead, Disco.
I'm trying to figure this out. So we kind of went through almost like the mainstreamification of Bitcoin as an asset and the development of it as a asset class. And as we say, going out to TradFi and all that stuff. So we all know that there's, finite amount and everything like that and expect the number to go way up. Doesn't that make the need for runes really powerful as, potential, currency within that ecosystem to transact? Like, doesn't like with more BlackRock buying more and, all those huge companies we saw buying it, doesn't that kind of accelerate the potential need for some of these runes to step in and kind of act as a currency?
Yeah, that's quietly what I've been thinking about heavily lately. And I think I might have wrote or spoke to that effect a bit in one of my previous posts. I can't recall, but yeah, what makes ordinals valuable is the amount is the bit of data that's inscribed into that output, right? And in the case of ordinals, it's art. And based on how that art looks, I might want to spend X amount of Bitcoin on it. Now, runes have the same effect, but it's different. They're fungible, right? So now I want to know what is the amount of that token inside that UTXO. That UTXO could be $3 worth of Bitcoin. But I care less about getting $3 worth of Bitcoin, more about getting 1 million RSIC, right? And so if RSIC or Dog or any one of these runes can position itself to become like a currency, like Elon wants to make Doge a currency, like a global currency. He's bullish on that. He thinks he can do it. You can take any token. It's just what do people find consensus around? What are people willing to barter and trade and move in and out of as a reserve?
Right.
And it could be Doge, it could be Dog, it could be anime Bitcoin rune, it could be Bitcoin comics, it could be
doubtful.
RSIC. Doubtful on all of those, maybe RSIC. You know what I'm saying?
No, sorry, because, not doubtful on anime Bitcoin rune. Sorry,
well,
that one I'm not so bullish on anymore. But you're right; it could be RSIC, it could be Billy. I mean, it really just depends what utility got built on top of one of these runes. So could, exactly. This is probably no secret, but the holy grail for one of these runes to becoming like a base token would be like Polymarket, right? That would copy the things that are the most successful. What's the Disco and I look every week on the election. I think there's over $1 billion in bet on the outcome of the U.S. election, which is just crazy. $1 billion on Polymarket. So if you made Billy Billy Market, people would happily go in and out, especially if the trades could be executed. Although even with that, you wouldn't even need to execute them very quickly. 10-minute blocks are fine if it updates. Like certain things need to update in real time, but that's not one of them. So is that possible without OpCat coming, or like could you do that with light pools or Whisper, or you kind of need OpCat to really get this multi-functionality and the smart contract functionality?
No, you don't need OpCat to do that with Bitcoin Layer 1 if you have a gossip network, and which is why I'm so bullish on Runes, because the potential for light pools, that is effectively light pools of what you're talking about, different transactions being broadcast. OpCat will create the ability to do way more, you know what I'm saying? Just a ton more of expressivity within the programming of different transaction linkings, but you don't need that for light pools. And if you have light pools, I again, going back to that article, I kind of broke down how, let's just assume RSIC, right? I think that they're the best, most capable team that could pull something like this off. I speculated that they might be building it right now. It's probably in my highlights. But what a light pool would be is these transactions being broadcast amongst this gossip network. And what people are caring about is what is the value of a token inside that UTXO. Now, RSIC could be the base currency to use this gossip network or this light pool to trade any number of tokens. And I want to know how much dog is in that UTXO and how much Billy is in that UTXO and Psycho Hamster is in that one. But what if people began to care less about any of that and more about one fixed token that kind of becomes a reserve, like we talked about? You're talking about a stable token that may not be stable. That's kind of what I'm alluding to. Just something that people are comfortable holding, like a Bitcoin. You know, the Bitcoin is the crypto that we're all comfortable holding. We know it's going to be volatile. It'll go up, it'll go down, but ultimately it's got product market fit. So I'm comfortable holding X amount of that. Now, I believe that there could be like a microcosm of that same sentiment happen within Runes, where there is one rune that people gather around because I want to use that because it's going to become integral to the Runes ecosphere. And I believe that to be RSIC. So we'll see. But beyond that, you can have these PSBTs tied to many other things. You know, if I'm listing X amount of dog or this rune or that ordinal, what if I wanted to list tickets to a concert? Is that digitized? Can that be tokenized? Do you give it a rune ID? Like the potential,
God, that would be
the
incredible.
ceiling is just incredibly high.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everything that you thought about when you heard smart contracts on ETH for the first time, you're like, yo, we could do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. You can do all that on Bitcoin.
But look what
with
ETH has
OpCat.
devolved into. Like, where's the value? So Polymarket we look at almost daily, or at least around the show we do. What are the other, we were joking earlier. I have been finally doing like some of my trades and taxes for the year because I neglected it for like 9 months and didn't it was a rude awakening in how many trades I had made. But I had a little ETH in OP on the OP chain. To get it from OP to ETH was easy, but to get it off the OP chain, it's actually a 7-day wait. And you're just thinking like, how centralized is so much going on in Liquidium? Like, I mean, you nailed it. Like, just because Bitcoin's decentralized, like we put so much emphasis on the importance of decentralization, yet these are centralized companies sidecarring on. Fractal, we know, I mean, the distribution of Fractal was completely like 50% them. Where is it? I have it somewhere here.
Yeah, I think that's about accurate. Yeah, about 50%.
It was a lot. Yeah, here it is. It was like 50% Fractal. I mean, just absolutely bonkers. And you know that even in the proof of work mining, they're mining those too. So it's probably even way more than you would think it is. Is Fractal done mining now?
That I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the network level. I was looking more at some of the different things being built on top of it. But either way it goes, I can't care. You know what I mean? I'm just not interested. I'm indifferent. You know, if they do well, I have a little bit of exposure. I may see some profits. If they don't, I don't lose much, if anything at all. And so I don't care. I think I made an analogy. This is like the salad that you eat, that the waiter, the dry salad with no dressing that the waiter brings out to you while your tomahawk steak is being seared in an open flame in the back of the kitchen. You don't want to waste your stomach space on junk like that. You know what I mean? And I'm probably going to get a lot of flack on my timeline. I'm sorry. No disrespect to people building on Fractal or using it or holding it or believing in it. I just don't. I hold some. I'm not bullish. I don't think it's going to have a very high impact on the market.
It feels almost like a test net to me. I mean, like, look at this. So the circulating supply right now is 2.3 million. The total supply is 106 million. Max supply is 210. I suspect the difference, almost in half, is because of that chart we looked at before, where Fractal, like 50% literally went to mining, 50% to insiders. So the fact that very little is circulating to me feels very ICO market. Like, I'm glad they're testing OpCat, and I'm sure some people will, in these little blips, if you zoom in, they'll make money, but it just, to me, it just seems like a very stacked game against you. I know Fractal was big. I heard billionaires. I heard the Asian market. Do we know who is behind Fractal?
Unisat.
Unisat is behind Fractal.
Yeah, I think if you look at how they operated, they moved in and took the lion's share of BRC activity, and then Runes came along and they kind of lost the narrative. They lost the plot. Magic Eden stole the show, took a lot of volume. People are not bullish on BRCs, so their main branch of revenue is kind of dying off. So rather than try to compete with Magic Eden on a direct product, they created this completely new thing. And I view it, like, I think you made a good analogy. It's like OpCat testnet is how I view Fractal. Like, it has OpCat and you can do stuff, but it's a completely different chain. So it's like a sandbox, a testnet for OpCat. Whenever OpCat comes, if you were able to build something really cool here and you can port it over early before, the onslaught and the wave in the first couple of days that OpCat does go live, you could be wildly successful, but the timeline on that is elongated,
right.
Multiple years, and it's tough. And you could put all those resources into building into this, hiring teams, taking funding, or whatever the case might be, or just dumping tokens on holders and miners. Either way it goes, what is the long-term success potential for something like that? And when you have Bitcoin, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's really interesting how all of this is just fleshing out. It's just hard for me to remain bullish on that. Do you think, I guess, getting to like Runecoin, why are you still, the team hasn't peeped in a while. We don't know anything about season 2. People in our DMs, in the Runecoin DMs are just like, good morning, Rune Dev. Like, it's almost turned into a joke. You could tell if there's any communication going on in the whale chat in the Discord, which I don't go into anymore, but like, they've been silent, but the market's soft, so I don't blame them. But like, they peek their heads every couple months and then they disappear. I don't know. Like, why are you still so bullish Runecoin in particular?
Well, for me, it just comes down to like potential, and track record and different things like that. I don't say that I don't have doubts. I think that they came out and they were transparent saying, this is an experiment. We're trying some stuff, might work, might not. And so I'm comfortable rolling the dice, the size of dice that I have rolled, based off of the information that I've seen tied to the provenance and the execution before that. Everything that they've done, they've proven they're capable devs, and those capabilities can translate if they continue to move to the future. They invested money into it. We don't know that they have withdrawn any. All of their team allocation is unmoved. It doesn't mean that they didn't have side wallets or private wallets they weren't moving in and out of and have information privy to be able to time that up to make a nice bag. We don't know that. I'm not making accusations, but that's the case for anybody out there developing something. You can do that, but ultimately you have to operate like, you're going to get caught eventually. Retroactively, this stuff is on chain forever. So move with the intention of being transparent even with wallets that are private, because they may not always be private, and that's yet to be seen. But the reason I'm still bullish is just because of, like I said, the potential of what they've done in the past, and I see light pools, like that article showed, as a major proponent to accelerate the growth of runes in general, and thereby ordinals as well. I think money can come into runes, and people want to do what? They want to flex a PFP, so then they go and they spend their profits on ordinals, so they can look cool and be in these different clubs. But runes is where you can gamble. Collections is where you can become a personality, identify. So the fact that light pools are possible, I believe somebody could be building them. I don't see anybody
Do you
in the
think
space.
RuneCoin is building light pools?
I do. Yeah, that article kind of laid that out in specifics as to why I think they could be. Because some of the various tweets that I had noted in there, some different posts and things that they have said and done in the past. The Casey thing, Casey laid out light pools like 3 weeks before Runes launched.
Right.
And then it was like a week after that where season 2 was announced. So maybe they got the idea and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they could have been building something like this for the last 5 months. Total speculation. You know what I'm saying? I could be completely wrong, and they're doing nothing. They're figuring it out. They're trying something completely different that'll flop, and we all lose. But in this space, you want people to innovate. You want people to try things. It's brand new frontier. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all building the plane as it's flying. Who can build it the best and the fastest? Those with good engineers and ideas. And I think that they've proven to have both at the helm. So I'm confident in putting the bag out there and seeing what happens.
And they're not dependent on OpCat at all. Although RuneDev has said, we've seen him tweet to say, we like OpCat, good. And you're saying, yeah, but he could be saying that because even though with this light pool, you could do a lot of this functionality probably in a harder way. When OpCat comes out, your ability to do even more, it sounds like, expands exponentially. Is that a fair statement?
100%. Yeah. I think maybe like the analogy could be like OpCat will be your PS5. And right now we're just using Atari. OpCTV could be like your Nintendo, your Super Nintendo. Nice incremental upgrade, gives you some more playability, but it's not like your Xbox 360 or your PC game and your PS5, your PlayStation 5. But with the PlayStation 5, with OpCat comes some risks, and though they might be small and negligible and all of that, there's a lot of people out there that don't want to introduce any risk vector into Bitcoin. And so that's the point of contention that I think is going to elongate this process with much debate back and forth. Is it necessary? If so, when should it be implemented? And I think that that's going to be like, ad nauseum discussion on that before we ever see it. Years. I would say 2 to 3 at minimum.
Yeah. Are Dot Swap and Arch Network, do we think they're working on some form of either gossip or light pool or anything? Or do you think RuneCoin could be the one which could position that coin like they did, a month and a half ago, of buying other things with RuneCoin? Granted, it was a very manual process, but they bought a CryptoPunk, they bought a Node Monk, they bought a Bored Ape, I believe, and use that as the base currency.
Yeah, again, that's what I alluded to in that article. Exactly. I think that,
just read the fucking article, everybody.
Just go read the article. Yeah, maybe I'll start doing more video formats instead of articles because they're so much better, quicker. But yeah, they kind of said, let's see if RuneCoin works in the wild. And then they did that buy, that purchase. And so that kind of fits with the same thing, where that could just be automated on a gossip network. You sign a PSBT and say, I will sell this Bitcoin Punk or this Node Monk for 30,000 RuneCoin or 100 or 10 million RuneCoin or whatever the number is. And then that PSBT gets broadcast across this network, this gossip network, which is the light pool. It gets accepted, and that's the case. Now, I don't think that Dot Swap and Arch Network are doing the same thing. I think it's something different, more like direct atomic swaps. But they're also supposedly very close. They got some solid teams. Dot Swap, I know some of the people that are like an advisor and some of the different people that have been on board. I think they've got some good funding. I haven't done a deep dive on them, but I know that what they're building and what Arch Network is building both look very intriguing. It's all layer one, so they're doing it the right way. When you start out on the right path, I can back that journey. You know, you might stumble, you might stub your toe, but you're walking on the right path. You know, if you're over there, I can't walk with you because you're going to ruin both of us. We're both going to fall down.
Could you just in a nutshell explain what DotSwap and Arch Network do and the value they're adding?
Probably not very accurately. It's been a couple of weeks since I even looked at their profiles or anything. But Arch Network wants to somehow introduce like layer one atomic swaps, and DotSwap is kind of doing that right now. DotSwap is also heavily invested or heavily developing within Fractal. They are where you could go and get your FB. That's where I got my FB, Fractal Bitcoin. I think you're supposed to be able to mint or buy CAT 20 tokens now. So they're putting a lot of energy and effort into leveraging the hype and buzz around Fractal. But they've got some
like
layer
you
one
said,
stuff.
maybe to prepare for the future. If OpCat does come out, let's say it did come out in a year, it sounds like you're saying this is almost test net. So it's kind of a win-win. You experiment, maybe you make some money on this side, and then it goes to OpCat Live, and you're literally like, and switch on. Sorry to say.
100%. I don't think that I guess I'm kind of unsettled as to whether or not the market cap of stuff built on Fractal is going to explode. I think devs will do a lot of testing, and they might have a small user base, but you can use that same small sample size of data to extrapolate whatever you want to for the plans for the future. So they might, you might have 150 users or a couple thousand and very, very small market caps and liquidity and TVL and all of that. But if things function, then it could blow up on the Bitcoin side. That's sort of what I guess.
Very cool. Very cool. This has been fascinating. Is there, Disco, are there any questions you have?
I mean, not at this point. I have a lot to dissect, from what was said, but I just think it's important. My biggest takeaway was just looking at the time and looking at kind of the runway that it takes for things. And it's really easy to, FOMO yourself from timelines and kind of lose some of the belief you had in something because it's like, oh, well, this is going to take over. So that's going to be totally irrelevant. And I guess kind of part of the net that I got from this conversation was, just chill and let things develop as we've talked about. As you said, Runes is already available. So yes, there could be other things that are really innovative down the road, but let's deal with the cards that are available right now and look at that and look at everything through that lens. And ultimately, I think the big point is, Bitcoin is graduating to a whole different stratosphere in terms of understanding and acceptance and ownership. And we're then going to have a whole nother kind of baseline to look at everything when that's, really elevated at that point. So if we're talking about Bitcoin being a 500,000 of Bitcoin or 1 million of Bitcoin or whatever it is, there's going to be a need for things to support it in different ways as the ecosystem grows. And I think that we don't have to just be like team OpCat or team this or that, but let's just watch the whole thing build out. And as you kind of said, let people play and let people develop and let's try all this stuff out. But for it ultimately to get, past that kind of velvet rope and into, Bitcoin L1, that's going to be its own battle when that makes sense for it to even be considered. So it's easy to fall into this kind of hype wagon and stuff like that. And it doesn't mean that some of the things that are being explored aren't of value and a lot of potential, but, stay focused on what we actually have right now. We're still, what was the happening? I mean, 6-7 months ago? So we're still in this like launch of Runes. So just remember that things do take time to kind of spread their roots and grow.
Yeah. And interestingly too, to put a cap on that, like Uncommon Goods is a token that's token 0 that has 3.5 more years of being mined. Really, it's just based on the price of the fees on Bitcoin, right, at any given time. And there's people who are getting it much cheaper by running full nodes and ORD and all that stuff. It will be interesting to see, even though I'd love it to be Rune coin, if Uncommon Goods as everything evolves, like if it does take 3, 4, or 5 years, as you say, to evolve, it would be almost like, what's the right word? Prescient that uncommon goods then falls into the thing cases like, runes are like, here are your shit coins, you degen douchebags, and uncommon goods actually becomes, because think about it, that was the only free and fair mint in all of this, right? Like it was like no distribution, rune 0, and there's 4 years. So you're like, I'll get some later. I'll get some later. I'll get some later. Well, in 4 years, that spigot is up. Hopefully for us, for people who have gobbled a bunch, Bitcoin fees get more expensive, so the supply is lower. But at some point, the max supply is going to be the max supply. Just hearing you share all of this, Scribe, and Disco, and your great recap, it just makes me wonder, like, is uncommon goods, could that be kind of the core thing? Because I could almost see Rune coin, like Rune Dev especially, like, yes, that would be perfect. We'll use RuneCoin too, but uncommon goods could be this currency. So it's just a thought I had. I wanted to throw out there. I know it's tangential, but it's like this hidden thing right in front of us that literally the faucet's on in every kitchen and every household if they want it to be. But at some point then not only is the spigot turned off, but then the whole sink is removed and the water line is cut off. So it'll be interesting to see as this evolves how uncommon goods, if any, plays a role.
Yeah, and absolutely. I don't talk a lot about uncommon goods because I don't want people to catch on to all the alpha that you just shilled. Thank you for doing that.
Damn it,
I agree 100%. Like I mentioned earlier, if there's one token that people might want to rally around, right now it could be RSIC, but in 4 years from now, once that mint is done, I think uncommon goods could be like a currency where you have Bitcoin as like, you want to hold that and you use that to transact uncommon goods. One problem is that they're non-divisible. So it's one whole uncommon good. There's no dividing it. And so that's a challenge, but that's also like $1, but how many can be minted? And to your point, if the fees go higher, you don't necessarily have to worry about a smaller supply because it's harder to buy, but you can sell at those really high fees because hopefully you minted it at like 3 or 4 sats per VByte anyways.
Right.
Yeah,
so wait, is that true for uncommon goods? Is that true for all runes, or other runes can be broken up if you allowed them to be?
Well, it's determined by the deployer. So when you etch a rune, you can determine I want 0 decimals or up to, I think, 18. It might be the number that you can have.
Man, so you had the option. He just chose not to.
One uncommon good is one uncommon good.
That could have huge consequences. You're absolutely right. Not being divisible. Ooh, that's like, if we look forward now and what's developing, that's not good.
It's not good, but if you were to mint a couple, at, let's say you minted 100 at 3 sats per VByte, and then 3 years from now, it's like 1,000 sats per VByte. Well, effectively, anybody that wants to mint before the mint runs out, rather than pay 3,000 sats per VByte, what's the equivalent of that in the sat value? There's your profit margin right there. So you're locked in. You know what I'm saying? And we'll see if we get to that point. But again, that's one of those things that's just a ways out. And like you summarized Disco really well, I think it comes down to timeline. What is your timeline? I'm bullish on OPCAT. I've looked at the risks. I think that they're securable to a degree, preventable. But I also think that it's going to be a long time before we ever get that. And so for people that want to play in this ecosystem right now, what do we have? We had BRC20s, and that was the one where like, UX sucks, need more liquidity and attention. All it took was one Binance listing for Ordi, and then you saw what happened. So you get one Runes listed on Binance, or Kraken has discussed working with Runes. Then we're going to see the liquidity come in, and that'll bring the attention. And then we're going to see like the pump that you've never seen before, because we're at fractions, very small percentage points of total market cap as far as token ecosystems and ordinals compared to NFTs and tokens on other chains. So just keep holding. I'm not buying much these days. I'm not selling anything. I'm just waiting and watching. I hope that this recent pump the last couple of days is kind of a reversal. after the Fed. It was all signaled by the Fed. They reversed their interest rates. And so if that continues, they're supposed to do another 50% drop before the end of the year. And then we'll see what happens with the election results and how the policy shapes up. And then the first few months of 2025 will be kind of frenzied. And then I think we may start to see more building go on for there. But in the meantime, you got people that have been building on runes for 6 months, potentially, going on 7. So we can see some of these things come into play very soon. They exist. We've got good tickers. Billy's a great meme. RSIC's a cool token with cool story. You got Dog. You got Psycho Hamster. You got so many different runes that have memeability or speculative value. So, sit back, enjoy the ride, and go touch some grass.
Exactly. Is there, before we sign off, Scribe, is there anything we didn't ask you about this to further understand? I have a far better understanding than I did at the beginning of the hour. I assume Disco did too. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we go?
I think I've covered it all.
Okay.
I'm good for rambling. So when I get on the topic, I just go. And I think I've covered all of those different basis points. If anything was missed, you come up with some questions later, or if the audience has some comments in the streams, then we can maybe address those in the next video.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, everybody. None of this has been financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. Scribe, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super enlightening, and we'd love to have you on again.
Appreciate it, fellas. Always good talking with you.
Right on. Thanks.
Take care.
Later.